everybody, this is AJ, this is the Mighty Glue Stick, and today is time for another Monster Ecology video. As I mentioned in my last video, this one's going to be about dinosaurs, because we're doing a special little feature this weekend on the land of Chilt for the upcoming Tomb of Annihilation adventure path. And dinosaurs in Forgotten Realms are known as behemoths, or behemoths. They are an ancient species, but not as ancient as they are on Earth. The dinosaurs of Forgotten Realms are, and these again differ from the dinosaurs of the Talenta Plains in Eberron and any other sort of dinosaurs that you find in other campaign settings. So dinosaurs of Forgotten Realms have a specific history, and they've got a couple of locations where they are commonly found, and they're not generally found anywhere else, and there's a very good reason for this. Back in the days of the Dawn War, Dendar the Night Serpent swallowed the sun and turned the Earth, Abiatoril, into an ice ball. And this basically wiped out all of the dinosaurs. That's their extinction event. And only the very, very tropical areas close to volcanoes and things did they actually manage to survive. Ubteo, the god of the Chiltern Peninsula, who was a primordial, fostered the behemoths, and they thrive in that land. Also, in a land called Malatra, which is down the bottom of Kara-tur. This is, there's three political sort of states there, which are Purang, Lautan, and Kuang kingdoms, which are, kingdoms is something of a grand title. These are thick, dense, hot jungles, and they are dominated by wild and savage creatures. Dense jungles, swamps, misty mountains, more hilly in Malatra, more mountainous in Chilt, and volcanic in Chilt, whereas it's more of a oceanic tropical climate, but still dense rainforests, very thick jungles, lots of poisonous and nasty creatures. And behemoths find their home there, quite often concealed by the dense foliage around them, moving their way between huge 100-foot tall canopy rainforest trees. So we've got two sources in the 5th edition for listings of these monsters, and I really particularly like them as a DM because they give us a broad range of different large body sizes and base animal stats, which you can adapt 1,001 different ways to and add various abilities to them, because these are baseline animals, essentially, devoid of magical powers and special effects and things like that. They are a good indication of what a creature without any extraordinary abilities is when it's that size and in that shape. So it gives you a good listing for claw and bite attacks, hit points, armor class, and things like that for a creature of huge size. So we got the Allosaurus, we've got Ankylosauruses, we have the Plesiosaurus, which is the fishy one, the Loch Ness monster type one, Pterodons, which are flying pterodactyl types, Tyrannosaurus Rex, of course, the Triceratops, of course. We've got, in Volo's Guide, we have the Dimetrodon, which is a very, very ancient, more reptilian form of dinosaur. We've got the Brontosaurus, and we've got Dinochus, which is the pouncing dinosaurs, little dinosaurs. So Brontosaurs are massive. They're the really great big ones, and in lands of Chilt and other places, they can occasionally be tamed and used as huge pack animals and even siege assault beasts. You can mount catapults on the back of these things, and of course they can drag siege weapons into place and things like that. So they're quite interesting. Also, they, if you're riding them, they have a neck which can stretch very far up, and so you could actually ride these things looking over the canopy of trees, which is very good for navigation. But for the most part, people who tame these things build a sort of palanquin booth on the back of this thing and ride it like a giant elephant. The Dinochus, which is a larger cousin of the Velociraptors. Velociraptors in Dungeons and Dragons in particular, and of course in our world, because these are all based mostly on ours, are smaller than they are depicted in Jurassic Park. Those are actually really big velociraptors, but for the most part, they were terrible chickens. They were like death turkeys. The closest things we have now are there's cassowaries. If you've ever watched Steve Irwin and his encounter with his cassowary, those things are damned lethal, and they'll disembowel you with a kick the first chance they get. But they're fairly pretty. So yeah, and it's reflected in the leap and pounce attack of this creature, which it moves 20 feet straight towards a creature. It's got a speed of 40 feet, so it can chase down pretty much anything. Armor class of 13, 26 hit points, not particularly tough. Challenge rating 1, and DC 12 strength saving throw will be knocked prone, and this creature will then proceed to claw you quite viciously. 1d8 plus 2 slashing damage, and of course punishing bite attack of 1d8 plus 2 as well. Dimetrodons are sailbacks. These are the ancient reptiles that would heat themselves up in the morning light by extending this. The blood flow of their body goes through this big sail along their back, and it heats them up and keeps them warm. And typically they would hunt on the shores of shallow water, filling the role of a crocodile, and they would kind of outcompete a lot of the crocodiles. But herein lies the other thing about dinosaurs, the behemoths in Forgotten Realms. They have been outclassed. They were around before dragons showed up. And once dragons showed up, dragons don't particularly like them. They see them as just animals, and particularly tasty. They're big feasts as far as a dragon is concerned. And dragons will hunt and kill them. So therein lies a problem. How do you reconcile the fact that dinosaurs exist and dragons exist in the same world? Well, it could. Various scholars of Candlekeep, for instance, say that the proto-dragons, which are more like behemoths, are the origin of dragons. I personally am of the opinion that dragons are otherworldly creatures which came to Abiatoril quite early on, and have diversified and spread out into various niches, and they have that elemental nature infused into them. You can also have that sort of thing which affects dinosaurs as well. So you can have zombie dinosaurs and undead type dinosaurs. You can have dinosaurs afflicted with lycanthropy. You can have dinosaurs which have infused elemental powers, like or shadow stuff. You can even have celestial type dinosaurs if you wanted to. There are representations of most of the creatures which have ever lived in the outer planes, and they were unaffected by disasters which wiped things out back in the material world. Food for thought. So, Hadrosaurus is a semi-quadrupedal herbivore, recognised by its bony head crests, and you've got Coatlicotlis, which is a giant relative of the Pterodon, with a wingspan exceeding 30 feet, and you can ride these things, so you could fly in a tamed Quetzalcoatlus. Stegosaurus, obviously everybody knows what a Stegosaurus is, but they're big bony plates forming a ridgeline down their back, flexible spiked tail, which they use to whip around and attack, or form up a defensive line, presenting their arse to their enemies and swinging those tails back and forth to protect the younglings. You've got the Velociraptors, which are fast. They work together as a group. They're the size of large turkeys, as I mentioned, and they're quite aggressive, and they're actually capable of taking down larger dinosaurs by essentially ripping into them, ripping through their hide with their tough blade-like toe claws, and they can actually get at arteries and hamstring and things like that. So that's the dinosaurs which are covered in Volo's Guide to Monsters. So that's quite a valuable resource there. But you can get by quite well with the ones which are listed in the 5th edition Monster Manual. The Allosaurus, which is a big and fast baseline predator that has... Bear in mind that the dinosaurs that are represented here, if you were looking at the history of Earth, for instance, they existed millions of years apart. Many of these dinosaurs would never have met each other. They didn't exist at the same time. Some of them were already well and truly extinct, already fossils, in fact, by the time other ones of these dinosaurs came along. I mean, they're around for hundreds of millions of years, so, and very successful. Ankylosaurus is another... thick armor-plated plant-eating dinosaur with a knobbed tail, not the spiky one, but basically the same sort of thing. They had exactly the same sort of lifestyle, exactly the same ecological niche, and exactly the same defensive pattern where they would turn around and present that knob to smash at things. But they were more protected in the front as well, and some of them may have actually butted heads in mating displays and things. We don't really know. Plesiosaurus, of course, is a marine dinosaur. There's a dolphin-like ichthyosaur as well, which isn't represented here, but you could modify the plesiosaurus as well to represent that, or just use the dolphin stats. There's also, of course, sharks were around in prehistoric times, and good case in point there. As a biologist, this always fascinated me, that there's representatives of all the different ages of sharks still existing in the ocean. They never went extinct, for instance. So there's egg-laying sharks, there's sharks which give birth to their young live, and yeah, so all the different evolutionary stages of mammals are reflected in living species of sharks. For instance, you've got very primitive sharks like the great white, for instance, next to the hammerhead, which is a very modern shark. Anyway, so another thing, we've got pterodons as well, of course, flying with wingspans of 15 to 20 feet tall. These were largely coastal, but they could also exist on mountain peaks and shelves and things like that, like gannet colonies. Areas where it's more hospitable for them landing and taking off without being bothered by things, because they're very ungainly on the land. But once on the wing, of course, they fly like albatrosses and can glide for mile after mile looking for prey. Typically, they would either hunt for fish or they would land next to a big carcass and scavenge off that, hopefully not being disturbed by anything. Triceratops, the very famous Triceratops, represented by it. When they were younger, they were smaller, more nimble and agile, and as they grew older, the back of their head grew these large fan-like frills, which got more and more large and elaborate as time went on. For many years, fossil experts thought they were different species, but it turns out they were just different stages of life of Triceratops. And of course, Tyrannosaurus rex, the enormous predator, not actually the biggest two-footed walking predator that the dinosaurs ever produced, but certainly the most famous and popularized in very many movies and things like that. Tyrannosauruses, of course, could clip along at 50 feet per round. They were really big, 13 armor class, 136 hit points, just brutal. They can use a multi-attack where they bite and can sweep with their tail as well. No claw attack, obviously, although I think actually they could have some sort of a foot attack if you were already prone and they stomped on you. That would be incredibly potent, because these things weigh multiple tons. A stomp attack is certainly applicable in the right circumstances. Tail attack, swing it around, plus 10 to hit, doing 3d8 plus 7 bludgeoning damage with a 10-foot reach. And the bite, again with a 10-foot reach, 4d12 plus 7 piercing damage, making it one of the most ferocious bites attacks in the game. And once you're in that bite, if you're a medium or smaller creature, that's most humanoids, your grapple escape DC is 17, and you're restrained, pinned inside the jaws of this creature, which is not a good place to be. So yeah, that's the behemoths for you. How you integrate them into the landscape, of course, they can't tolerate cold climates. Although they are not cold-blooded creatures, they're more like big birds. And some of them, the smaller ones, can be more reptile-like, but even they can handle quite a wide range of climates. For instance, in New Zealand, we have a tuatara, which is a very ancient species, more similar to dinosaurs than it is to modern reptiles. And they live on coastal islands and things like that, where the temperature can get quite chilly, even down to 0. But they get along perfectly well. They have for hundreds of millions of years. And most lizards and things can get along quite well in fairly cold temperatures, but you don't find them in alpine regions or snowy regions and things like that, unless they have some sort of otherworldly infusion of elemental energy in them, which is quite possible. Of course, the people who live and train dinosaurs, anybody who lives in an environment with any large creature is probably going to make some effort to tame them and use them or exterminate them. And it may well be that there are other environments in Faerun where these creatures thrived, but they have been wiped out, or they be transported somewhere where the climate is hospitable, but the food source is just not sufficient for them, or they are struck down by disease, or inbreeding causes problems that causes the population to dwindle and die off. This could happen over and over again. So it's not unsurprising that a large area, well, most of the area of Tyrol, doesn't have dinosaurs around. I'm not sure about Abia. When it was a separate land of the primordials, there may have been behemoths there as well that were transported when AO separated the worlds, but I'm not entirely sure about that one. So yeah, you can locate them in the jungle environments, dense jungle environments with volcanic sort of lost world feel to them that are at the end of the lands of kara-tur in Malatra, and of course in the jungles of Chult. So yeah, that's very interesting. Also, don't forget, you may try and transport them from the land of Chult using a large ship or some such, and it'd have to be a really big ship to transport something the size of a Brontothon. Oh, well, I guess you could transport the eggs and things like that, but then again, you're going to have to be very precise about how warm you keep them and how long they gestate and things like that. They're largely independent when they're born, but they have a ferocious appetite that only a big jungle environment and things can really sustain. So you need to take an ecology of these things with you wherever you go, and they need to be kind of self-supporting. Otherwise, they're going to quickly become a pest. The predators are very quickly going to eat through all of your livestock, and the vegetation eaters are going to wipe out whole forests, because the forests just are not capable of dealing with that sort of predation by something that can knock over a tree to eat some leaves. Yeah. So yeah, that's the behemoths for you. I hope you find some enjoyment in them in your game, and I hope you find some more accepting of their place in the game of Dungeons and Dragons. That they actually have a sensible location that they come from. They're not a pest species. They're no more outlandish than dragons or dragon turtles or Tarrasques or boulets, for instance. I mean, yeah, a boulet is pretty much a dinosaur, kinda, and a Tarrasque looks very much like a dinosaur too. I mean, who knows what their actual metabolism is? They're certainly magic resistant. Yeah, and of course there could be all sorts of other types of dinosaur type creatures that we never had on Earth that exist in the land of Abiatoril. So you feel free to come up with your own variations. As I say, I use these guys as a baseline species for modifying and turning into all sorts of other creatures, and that is something that I encourage you to try out with these, because it works for me, so I'm quite confident that it would work for you too. Thanks a lot, everybody. Another sort of short video for me. I'll be back with more explores. I'm going to leave a couple of lists, a couple of shout outs down in the links down below of another couple of really good explores and centered on Faerun. These two channels have been around for, I think, about 6 months or so, and they are really good. Jordan's videos in particular, I find it just absolutely, he just floored me with his lore and things like that. They're better than mine, honestly, so go and check those out for sure, and subscribe and like, and tell them that I sent you. Thanks a lot, everybody. I'll catch you again soon. Hey, have a good weekend for what's left of it for you. Have a great week, and I'll be back with another Explore video soon.